First of all, the building is not possessed. We are aware of the issue. And actually, maybe for the rest of Mass, if we can't turn off those spotlights, maybe we'll just take a break from the lights altogether. But Helen or Travis, if you can find a moment, see if you can just turn off the spots that are flashing. Father Bob said at the 9 o'clock Mass that there was a really expensive controller board that didn't make the cut with the renovation, and it just wasn't quite old enough. It's old enough now, so we'll see. Before I forget about it as well, Bill, would you stand up and just wander up here just for a second? So Bill Elwer, I did say that right, Elwer? I'm so good. So he is in formation for the permanent diaconate, and he's been assigned to St. Ambrose this year. You'll get a little bit more formal introduction, but since he's checking us out this weekend, I'm going to be around from this point forward through the whole academic year, right?
That's right.
Excellent. So if you see his face, welcome him, learn from him, let him learn from you, love him into the diaconate if you would. So Bill, thanks for being here. Circular thoughts, are they gone? Oh, no, they're not. All right, we'll give it a whirl. I mean, really, we can do without the spots if you can turn them off. We can. We can do without all the lights. We really could. Just shut it down. It'll be all right. So as we look at our readings here today, certainly we pick up with Jesus in an interesting moment. And this moment where people who are seemingly, very faithful Jewish people, they follow a lot of rules and, they're very attentive to particular prescripts of at least their own law. They're having this dinner with Jesus. And, here you have the Lord of the entire universe, right, present in their midst. And they have an opportunity to share a meal. They have an opportunity to dine, opportunity to converse, pray, whatever it is. And what are they concerned with? They're concerned with how his disciples are acting. They don't do what we do, right? Why do they not follow the tradition of the elders? And Jesus unloads on them, really, and we even, we miss out on some of the examples that he uses of why the Pharisees are wrong in this situation, but you can boil it all down to this. Jesus rails against them for their rules, right? The ones that they had made up over time. He's not saying that rules themselves are bad, but he's saying that the ones that they have made up and are holding more important than God's law, right? That's what's helping them to waste away on the inside. What they had really done was made up a tradition of this is what it looks like to live out our faith at the expense of the law that God had given them through Moses. And we heard in the first reading when Moses told the people that God had said, do not add to this, do not subtract to this. He's talking about the 10 Commandments in particular. And along the way, the tradition had developed that, you can do all of these things, or you have to do all these things, even at the expense of the law that God had said. So that's what Jesus is railing against. It isn't the fact of rules themselves. Jesus wants everyone to follow God's word, to follow God's law. You cannot neglect the law for the sake of your own rules that you made up. That's what he's getting after. And I say that in part because I think for a lot of people, the logical jump from this particular episode in Jesus' life and ministry is to just wonder, okay, well, what about the church? How does the church fit in? We have plenty more rules than the 10 Commandments, don't we? Yes. you know this, right? Plenty more rules than the 10 Commandments. But the difference is this, right? It's not sacrificing God's law for the sake of human traditions. It's an expression of God's law in particular situations, right? It's taking God's law and holding that, at the top of the pyramid, if you will. Holding God's law right out in front. And as questions arise, well, what does that mean for this situation? What does that mean for this situation? Okay, well, here you have markers, ideas, sometimes not even so much absolutes. You have to live your life exactly this way or you're going to die. It isn't exactly like that, but a further expression of God's law. The church is in the service of God's law and God's word. It's not making up rules at the expense of God's law, but is at its service. You know, the reality is we're in a different situation anyway, because when Jesus comes onto the scene, what you have is the law embodied. Jesus himself is God's law. I mean, what do? You know, as Christians, and Jesus helps make this transition. Yes, the Ten Commandments are still important, right? Like, I mean, if we don't follow the Ten Commandments, we got some serious heart issues, you know, in a spiritual sense. But Jesus embodies that law, and he shows us what it means to fully live out God's word and God's command in our hearts. Because ultimately, that's so much of what he's concerned about. It isn't about just simply checking the box of these laws and rules. It isn't about, you know, just saying, I get to Mass on Sunday. You know, I haven't killed anybody, Father. You know, there's a common one. Check that box, right? Good, right? Good. You haven't killed anybody. But Jesus wants to bring our whole lives together, right? He doesn't want us just to conform to the law that God has set before us. Jesus wants the complete and total transformation of our hearts. So what do we see in the law embodied in Jesus? What do we see in his life? Yes, in a certain sense, yeah, he's following God's law, but we see a heart moved with compassion for those who struggle, a heart moved with compassion for the poor, the widow, the orphaned, a heart moved with compassion for those who do not know the ultimate meaning in their lives. Yes, following God's law, but stepping deeper into a place of total transformation of our hearts. Jesus says, their hearts are far from me. To loop back through something that Moses said, why is the law there in the first place? Again, it's not just to check the boxes of the law, but Moses said that God gives the Israelites this law so that they may live, so that they may have life, so that they may prosper. And the same goes for Jesus too. Follow me as the law so that you might have life eternal, so that you may thrive, so that you may prosper, and you might bring that life into the world as you go forth. Jesus is not saying, the law, the rules aren't important, but our whole mind, heart, and body must be transformed by his grace, that it isn't simply about checking the boxes, but that we might step into that space and our hearts may be moved. First of all, moved by his profound love for us, but also, too, the compassion that he had to step out into the world and bring his life to others in need. So ultimately, all of us are in a little bit different place when it comes to, how we approach the law, how we approach the church, how we approach Jesus himself. But all of us, in the end, need an opportunity this week to really examine the disposition of our hearts towards, maybe authority in general, but specifically Jesus as the embodiment of the law, Jesus as God's word come into the world, and the particular expressions of God's law that he's allowed to filter into our lives as Christian people through the church. What is the disposition of my heart? Am I like the Pharisees who are trying to check the boxes so that I can go live my life on my own, in a sense, apart from God? Do I believe that I know better than God at times? Do I believe that I know better than the church at times? Whatever it is, all of us need a purified disposition of our hearts towards Jesus in the end, right? It's all about Jesus. It all comes back to him and what he has allowed to flow into our lives in the church. So we come before him today, and truly, ultimately what we would do here, right, is give our entire lives over. Again, the same thing we do every week, but allow his law to be a part of our hearts, a part of our minds, a part of our bodies. Truly, that we might receive his love, that our hearts may come alive and serve with the compassion that he calls us to, and we may allow his law and his life to flow through us and into the world.